Hi, Richard Foster from Foster Infrastructure here. Today I'm going to give you a quick overview of the PPP framework here in Australia. The implementing principles are primarily documented in the National PPP Policy. As it is actually the states that undertake most of the PPPs, the National PPP Policy has to be applied by the individual state governments. How is this done? Well, what we have is what are called jurisdictional requirements for each state and territory that set out how the national PPP policy is applied in the individual state or territory. So here in Victoria, we have what are called the Partnerships Victoria requirements, and they set out how the national PPP policy will be implemented within the state of Victoria. The second element of the framework is the operational framework. In Australia, we have very substantial guidelines that sit alongside the national PPP policy. So a standardised set of national PPP guidelines, and these too are applied at the state and territory level under the jurisdictional requirements. The next element of the framework is the fiscal management framework. Now, unlike many other countries, the way we do PPPs in Australia does not create large contingent liabilities that need to be managed under a separate regime, under a standalone PPP fiscal management regime. In fact, most of the liabilities created by our PPPs are direct liabilities in the form of government payments. And then when we come to financial reporting in respect of our PPPs, we report them both in terms of their impact on the government balance sheet, and also, very importantly, we report in significant detail at the project level on the financial commitments we're making that are future liabilities of the government, but are not currently reflected on the government balance sheet. So I believe we have a very strong fiscal management regime for our PPP projects. The fourth element of the PPP framework is what we call the institutional framework. Here we follow a very similar approach to many other countries, and each state and territory has its own institutional arrangements, but they generally involve having a central agency of government with an oversight responsibility for the PPP policy, the jurisdictional requirements, and the overall program, while individual line agencies, line ministries, have responsibility for the individual projects. The fifth component of the PPP framework are other governance-related matters, and this, in the case of the state of Victoria, includes a number of elements. Firstly, we have very well developed quality assurance processes. In particular, we have what we call gateway reviews that are independent reviews at particular points in the life of a project, where an independent team comes in and reviews the project and provides advice on whether it's ready to proceed to the next phase and what might be done to better ensure the success of the project. Another important element of the framework is oversight by our Auditor General. Our Auditor General conducts performance reviews of PPP projects. Disclosure is also a very important part of our PPP framework. After each PPP contract is signed, the government releases a project summary that explains the history of the project to date, how the tender process was conducted, what the outcome of the tender process was, what the commercial deal is agreed with the private sector, and other key features. And that provides an accessible way for people to understand what it is that government has committed to over the course of the PPP contract. In addition, we also release on the internet the PPP contracts themselves. In some cases, some commercially sensitive information has to be removed before public disclosure, but the vast majority of the contract is there and available for anyone to read. So that's a quick summary of PPP frameworks in Australia. I'll link below to the documents that I've referred to, so the National PPP Guidelines, the Partnerships Victoria Requirements, some of the project summaries and so on, so you can go and see how all of those elements of the framework come together in practice. And don't forget to hit subscribe below so you find out about future videos from Foster Infrastructure.